Hi friends, today from the solid state of chemistry we are discussing what are Bravais lattices. In the last video we have seen what are the 7 basic unit cells or 7 primitive unit cells or 7 crystal habits, where we found that the unit cells had particles at the corners of the unit cells, but additional points may arise in some specified positions in the unit cell. Look here, for instance, the unit cells can have additional particles, means in addition to the corner particles at the body center, particle at the body center here, only one body center is the body center, or particle at the face center, like here, this face center, like that. 6 faces are there. All the 6 faces may get occupied by particles, that is face centered. Or a third case, a restricted case of face centered called end centered, means you will have particle at the 2 opposite faces, centers of 2 opposite faces, whereas the other 4 face centers remain unoccupied. That is called end centered, end, not edge, end centered. So we have simple body centered, face centered and end centered unit cells. If all the 7 unit cells are having all these 4 modifications, we will have 7 into 4, 28 type of modifications. But somehow in nature, we find only half this number, means 14 type of modifications, which are collectively called Bravais lattices. And the distribution of these 14 Bravais lattices is not uniform. For instance, some have simple only or primitive only, some have simple and face-centered, some have all the 4, and so on. And collectively they make 14 varieties. So students will have to remember which makes which unit cell all. Anything may be asked from this section. So we will see one by one which all unit cells are having which all modifications. Point 1 is that all the 7 unit cells have the primitive or simple form. That is, unit cell without any additional particle. This is present for all the 7. So primitive is common for all. So out of 14, 7 we have already mentioned that primitive ones for all the 7. Still 7 are there. And we have to remember that like this. Our simple unit cell is having simple, body centered, face centered, but not end centered. The restricted face centered, which is end centered, that is not present for this cubic unit cell. It can have simple unit cell, body centered unit cell, face centered unit cell. So it is having 3 varieties. Okay. Coming to rhombohedral. Rhombohedral is its own modification. We have seen that in the previous class. Rhombohedral. This is the rhombohedral now, and this is having only the simple one. This is having only the simple unit cell. It does not have body centered, face centered, and as well as end centered. It is only having the simple or the primitive one. Now, in the studied order, the next one is the tetragonal. Tetragonal, no? Tonic cover, as I mentioned the other day. This tetragonal is having, in addition to the primitive, body centered only. Remember, Tetragonal, the tonic cover is having the additional modification, the body center, body center only. Its partner was hat, tetragonal and hexagonal, so it is hexagonal. And this complicated one is having only primitive, easy to remember. Being complicated, it is not having any other modification, it's having only the primitive units. Now come to the matchbox type. This is the only one. This is the only one having all the 4 modifications. Remember, the matchbox is having all the 4 modifications. That is, this alone is having simple, body-centered, face-centered, as well as end-centered. The only case. Simple, body-centered, face-centered, and end-centered. And we got the monoclinic from this only, no? Like this. Pressing it like this, it changes to the monoclinic. We have seen that the other day. And that one is having, in addition to the primitive, end-centered. Primitive and end-centered. Primitive and end-centered. Restricted case of end-centered is called end-centered. Okay, so this is having 2. And the final one, the triclinic, the most complicated structure, triclinic, tom, orthorhombic monoclinic, triclinic, tom, the last one, with a no unequal sign. It is having only the primitive or the simple one. Maybe due to its complication, it is not having any other further complications. It is only having the simple one. Okay. Now if we sum up the number, it will come up to be 14. We will recollect in another way. As I have mentioned, all are having simple unit cell. And those which is having only simple unit cell are hexagonal or rhombohedral and triclinic, only simple ones. Possibly you may remember the word heart and stress on HRT. 2 others are having 2 modifications, 2 unit cells. No unit cell is having the combination symbol and faces. So we have 3 unit cells with the 1 form only, that is simple only. 2 unit cells with the 2 forms. 1 unit cell with the 3 modifications. Cubic, symbol, body-centered, face-centered, no end-centered. And 1 unit cell with all the 4 modifications. 1 unit cell with all the 4 modification, that was the matchbox we have mentioned, means orthorhombic. This is having all the 4. So make a chart, study that y versus in fashion y versus x as well as x versus y. So the picture will be clear to you. For which all unit cell, which is the packing. For which all packing, which are the unit cell.